Psalm 34:19, where it says, "Many are the afflictions of the righteous, and he delivers us out of them all." And that's a verse that I've heard so many times before, and it's kind of another one of those that I've like checked off. And I did the Lectio Divina on this verse. I took it slow. And I'm like, what is this verse saying? And it's, many are the afflictions, many. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot of hope, but it's just true. I mean, the word says there are going to be many things that you are going to walk through. And it says that they will be great. That word many means that there's going to be a lot of them, and they're going to be big. And it says afflictions. Afflictions, that can be evil, pain, injury, or calamity. And it comes on the righteous. I just stopped and thought about that for a minute. I mean, the word's saying that many are the afflictions of the righteous. So you almost think that should say many are the afflictions of the unjust. Many are the afflictions of the people who don't walk with God. Many are the afflictions of the people who just have a lot of sin in their life. But it's not. It says many are the afflictions of the righteous. But he delivers us out of them. How many? All. He delivers. You get through. You get through. And Chris Valentin, one of the ministers at Bethel, he says that we can't always control what happens to us, but we can control what happens inside of us. Because the things you go through are going to change you. They just will. You will not be the same after as you were before. And you get to choose. Do you want to be better? I do. I want to find something. I want to get something out of it. I think sometimes people get stuck in thinking, what did I do to deserve it? What did I do to deserve this? You know? Because we've heard things like, you just don't have enough faith. Or we've heard, you must have sinned, and that umbrella of protection's gone. Right? We've heard things like that. But we have to get past the fact that we didn't do anything to deserve it. You know, the word says that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And it's like, what thief waits for the open door? He breaks in, and it's not right. I was reminded of Ruth and Naomi. You know, I think everyone's probably familiar with that story where Naomi had lost her husband, and Ruth was her daughter-in-law, and she had lost her husband too. And so they had experienced horrible loss. They were in a foreign land where they had nothing. They had no family. They lost their husbands. They were women who really kind of put them low on the totem pole. I mean, their lives were really broken. And in Ruth 1, verse 20, this is Naomi talking. She said to them, "Call me not Naomi," which means pleasant. "Call me Mara," and that one means bitter. "For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me." And this verse speaks out to me because she chose. She was making a choice right there. She chose bitter over pleasant. And she was blaming God. But that's not the end of her story. Isn't that awesome? It's so awesome to me. And what I love about it, it was the connection, just like with God being near to the brokenhearted. He was near to Naomi. Ruth was in her life. And Ruth, she had lost everything too. She was mourning. And all she did was she just committed to Naomi. She said, "Wherever you go, I will go." And you know what's interesting? She did not try to have words to comfort Naomi. Which this week, that's been like, I've needed to get over that. Like, I'm not going to probably have words. And when you're near to somebody who's going through something, you put pressure on yourself, like you think you have to have words. Sometimes you don't. You just be near. You just stay with them. Say, wherever you go. I will be there for you. And the story, I'm hoping I'm not just assuming people know more. You know, if not, read the book of Ruth. It's wonderful. But Ruth went to the fields, and she got her eyes on Boaz, who was the kinsman redeemer. And I've heard this music minister from Bethel, she talks about just looking at like a painting of who Jesus is. Just look at him. And when you're doing that, he does the work. He will like flow through you to the people that are around you. And I've heard it said too that he's better at explaining himself than we ever could be. So sometimes it's not about our words trying to comfort people or trying to help them. It's just our presence. And if our view is just on God, our view is on who our deliverer is, that's going to flow through you. And you can just trust in that. You don't have to work up having the words. Just commit to be near the person. Just be near them. Be available. Back to, what did I do? The English word for pain, I thought this was very interesting. It comes from the Latin word pena, P-O-E-N-A, pena. Anybody in court recognize that word like a subpoena? That word actually means punishment or penalty. So of course, that's why we probably think we're being punished. When we're going through pain, it's the price we gotta pay. We've done something wrong. And we internalize it like we've deserved something, but we don't. The word just says, Psalm 34:19, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but he will deliver us out of them all. And there's value in going through it too. I love the creation of God and how it displays who he is. It speaks of him. I learn so much just from seeing animals, nature. I love it. And one of the things is the butterfly. The butterfly, it starts out as a caterpillar and it surrounds itself with a cocoon. And when the butterfly is ready to emerge, you can see like I think it's called the chrysalis or the whatever. Is it the chrysalis? Thank you. Yeah. How it kind of starts to crack and it starts to move. And there's a story of a gardener who was kind of watching this process and saw this about to happen and knew what was to come, knew that there was going to be a beautiful butterfly emerging. And he was watching and could see like the butterfly inside just like struggling, like trying to press out and trying to break forth and finally stopping like almost in defeat. But he just didn't know enough about the process. It was just taking a little bit of time because it takes time to go through a process. And so he cut the cocoon open. And eventually, what was supposed to be this butterfly, it died because the butterfly needs to struggle. It needs to strengthen its wings, and it needs to come through the small hole to have like the fluid drained out of it. It's all part of the process. And I believe that when we go through painful things, when we go through struggles, it's all for good, and we have to do it on our own. You just have to trust the process that God is going to bring you through. You don't need to try to rush it, try to bypass it, try to do a shortcut. Just walk through it with God because he's faithful. We will never enter a wilderness or a struggle that he hasn't already been through. He hasn't already been there. He hasn't already found the way. Sometimes I think we think that, oh, God, this one's going to stump God. Like, how is he going to figure this one out? He's already been there. He has already figured out the way. And like we sang, he's the way maker. And if we stay close to him, we stay resting in him, we're going to know the way out. So walking through Psalm 23:4, we know that verse. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. And it has struck me the last few weeks how it says walk through the valley. It says walk. We don't run and we don't fly. We walk. It doesn't say how many steps, but I think it's obvious it's more than one because it doesn't just say we step into the garden or we step into the valley. It says we walk through it one step at a time. And I believe that there is a rhythm with God, and it's a step by step by step by step. And that went along with Jamie's message about just the walking, the slowing down. Jesus walked. He didn't run. There's this book that Jamie was referencing to called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And I just want to read a little something to you from it. Okay. It says, love, joy, and peace are at the heart of all that Jesus is trying to grow in the soil of your life. And all three are incompatible with hurry. If you don't believe me, next time you're dragging the family, or if you're single, dragging your roommate out the door, pay attention to your heart. Is it love and joy and peace you feel? Of course not. At lunch, my non-mentor mentor, John, wisely observed, I cannot live in the kingdom of God with a hurried soul. Nobody can. Not only does hurry keep us from the love, joy, and peace of the kingdom of God, the very core of what all human beings crave, but it also keeps us from God himself, simply by stealing our attention. And with hurry, we always lose more than we gain. C.S. Lewis says, to walk with Jesus is to walk with a slow and unhurried pace. Hurry is the death of prayer and only impedes and spoils our work. It never advances it. So I like that because I like to go slow. I've gotten slower. I used to be a really fast walker. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yes. I had one arm that would swing really fast. But I have slowed down so much, and it's not just because I'm older.
As a joke, I would jog next to her just to show her how fast she was walking.
Yes,
So.
yes. So it's just a walk. It's a walk through it, and I think it's a time to kind of look around. I have a friend who said, I hope I quote her right, but she just said, I'm just gonna look around while walking through this wilderness and see what treasures I might find. There are treasures in your wilderness. There really, really is. So walk through it, be present, and there are things that God is going to reveal about himself to you in these things. I don't know if I want to get into that. How do we walk? How do we walk? Psalm 119, 105. The verse says, his word is a lamp unto my feet and a light to my path. His word. And I think I used to think that was just the Bible. Like, okay, when I need advice, I need to go right to my Bible, and that's going to be my light, and that's going to be my path. But John 1:1, we know that it says that in the beginning was the Word, which was Christ, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God himself. And who is Christ? Isaiah 9:6 told us. It says, unto us a child is born, to us a son is given. The government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called. This is what is a light unto our path, you guys. He's wonderful, Counselor, mighty God, the everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace. That is the light to your path. Remembering who Jesus is. He will never leave you, and that's what he's going to do for you. He's going to be your counselor. He's going to be your Father. He's going to be your peace. He's so good. And I believe that there's a thing to this of bringing things into the light of his word. The light. When you bring things out, the darkness can't cover things up and make you feel shame. Light is going to bring life into your life. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. There's an example of this in 2 Kings 4. I'm going to kind of shorten the story, but there's a piece of it that ministers to me quite a bit. It's the story of the Shunammite woman and Elisha the prophet. And the story goes that she was just kind of a wealthy woman in a city. And there was a prophet, Elisha, that would come to town. And she finally, told her husband, like, let's make a room for him in our house. Let's make a place for this prophet to come and stay. And so they did. And Elisha wanted to do something for her. So he knew that she did not have any children. And so he prophesied she'd have a son. She had a son. Well, the son died. So that's kind of where we're going to pick up with this story. In 2 Kings 4, verse 21, said that she went up. So this is after her son died. She went up and she laid her son on the bed of the man of God, then shut the door and went out. So she laid down what seemed to be lost on the resting place of the promise. She didn't just lay it down and lose it. She didn't just, get angry and whatever. She just, okay, I have a promise and it seems to be lost. I'm just going to lay this on this promise right now. And then here's what she did. Verse 22, she called her husband and she said, please send me one of the servants and a donkey so I can go to the man of God quickly and return. Notice, she expected to return. She knew she was going to come back because just an escape is not your answer. When you lose something, sometimes you do. You just want to be done and escape. But there's a promise that was given to you, and you're going to come back to it. Verse 23 said, why go to him today? Her husband asked. It's not the new moon or the Sabbath. That's all right, she said. So she's not even really telling her husband what's going on. He didn't know that the son had died. And there are some times that your struggle is just a conversation between you and God. And sometimes it's not for you to take to other people. Let's go on to verse 24. So she saddled the donkey and said to her servant, lead on, don't slow down for me unless I tell you. So she set out, came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. When he saw her in the distance, the man of God said to his servant Gehazi, look, there's the Shunammite. Run to meet her and ask her, are you all right? Is your husband all right? Is your child all right? Everything's all right, she said. So notice here too, we've seen this in the prodigal son, the story where the father was watching for the son. Here too, Elisha was watching. He represents the promise of God in the story. And so that promise was watching for her. And she came running. She came fast. And Elisha, his word means that God is salvation. And when he sent his servant, Gehazi, his name means Valley of Vision. And you notice that she bypassed him because I think sometimes when we are in so much pain, we can't even see. There might be somebody even that comes into our life that maybe God has even sent, but you just might not be in a place where you can receive from them. But don't stop there. Just get to your promise. Get to the one who gave you the promise. And don't stop. Just don't escape. Don't give up. This has been such an encouraging story for me. Okay, verse 27, it said, when she reached the man of God at the mountain, she took hold of his feet. Gehazi came over to push her away, but the man of God said, leave her alone. She's in bitter distress, but the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me why. Okay, notice her position at his feet. There is something about getting low. There is something about positioning yourself at the feet of Jesus. And here it says that, Elisha's like, I don't know what's going on with her, but I think too, and I'm giving my opinions here, but this is what I believe. I believe that there are times when God just needs you to put words to what's going on. And sometimes you can't. I know that. Sometimes all you have is, you cry, and that's all you have, and that's okay because God hears that and he knows. But I think sometimes he tries to help us too by having us say what it is that we need from him. So she, in verse 28, she says, did I even ask you for a son, my Lord? Didn't I tell you, don't raise my hopes? Because she had argued with Elisha. She didn't want a son. So she's bringing that up now. She's like, okay, why? Why am I here? I didn't even want this, and this isn't fair. So verse 29, Elisha then said to Gehazi, tuck your cloak into your belt, take my staff in your hand and run. Don't greet anyone you meet, and if anyone greets you, do not answer. Lay my staff on the boy's face. Verse 30, but the child's mother said, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. So he got up and followed her. So what I want you to remember from this, she got to his presence. She got there. And she left with the promise. He is the promise keeper. And there are going to be times when we need to acknowledge what we're going through, acknowledge it, and get at his feet and say, this is the promise that you gave me. I'm here at your feet. Help. And don't let go.
I believe we always have to acknowledge what it is. I believe you have to look it in the eye. I mean, I think there was a day, and maybe I grew up in this church, so maybe in the 90s in this church, where you if you were in faith, that shouldn't be happening to you then. Why is that even happening to you? Which is, I will say, completely wrong. Okay? I mean, I can give you instance after instance after instance in the Bible where they went through something, right? And so, I remember when when the planes were propelled, they didn't have jets yet. They're trying to ship cod across the states, right? And so they got cod in the airplanes in these coolers or even in trucks, for people to eat, this cod. But what happened is the cod would just be stagnant the whole way. Stagnant, wouldn't swim, just sit in the water. And so it just sits there for that long, and it would hardly be edible. It needed to swim. And someone came up with the idea, they put the cod's mortal enemy into the cooler with it. It was a catfish. And lo and behold, the cod with the enemy in the cooler with it was stronger, stayed on the move, and did not get soft, And so you walk through the valley of shadow of death, come out on the end on the other side, you will be stronger. You can be stronger. And Ecclesiastes 3, if we look at verse 1 for starters, in everything there is a season. So it's talking about seasons. And it goes through all these different things. But if you go down to verse 4, all right, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn. So these are in seasons. Time to weep is a season. A time to mourn is a season, all right? And I don't generally look at a season as 7 or 8 days, all right? I just don't believe that. And I'm going to give you some different examples here where it maybe could be 7 or 8 days. But I want to look at Psalm 42, 1 through 11. He starts out, as the hart pants after the water brooks, so panteth my soul after thee, O God. My soul thirsteth for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? So this is how he's starting. But he then gets real honest and says, my tears have been my meat day and night. And so this guy is crying. Is it David wrote this psalm? Does anyone know? So David is crying, and he's admitting that he's crying, not just all day, but all night, while they continually say unto me, where is thy God? Next verse. When I remember these things, I pour out my soul in me. For I had gone with the multitude. I went with them to the house of God with the voice of joy and praise, with the multitude that kept holy day. Why art thou cast down, O my soul? Even that statement, maybe in the 90s, in some venues, would be considered not a statement of faith. You better not say that. You shouldn't say that. You shouldn't say you're cast down. No. You need to look it in the face. You need to look it in the eye, just like David was doing. I believe this was written in the Bible for a reason. He asked his soul, why art thou disquieted in me? Then he tells his mind, will, and emotions, hope in God. Notice he keeps God. He might be down, but he keeps the connection with God. He might be calling it and looking his pain in the eye, but he is connected with God at the same time. For I shall yet praise him for the help. What's he praising him for? For help. So I can get some of his countenance. I need his countenance right now. Oh my God, my soul is cast down within me. Okay, we know David. But he can't stop. He's going. He's being honest. Therefore will I remember thee from the land of Jordan and the land of the Hermonites, from the hill Mizar. Next verse. Deep calleth unto deep at the noise of thy waterspouts. All thy waves and thy billows are gone over me. Yet the Lord command his loving kindness in the daytime, and in the night his song shall be with me, and my prayer unto the God of my life. I will say unto God, my rock, why hast thou forgotten me? He's being pretty straight, isn't he? Why have you forgotten me? He's called a man after God's own heart. There are very few, I think, that were closer to him. Very few. And he's straight up asking, have you forgotten me? Not have you. Why? Where are you? This is just a real conversation with the Lord. Why go I mourning? Because of the oppression of the enemy. So he gives us a hint. It's people that are causing this. They're causing him to mourn, right? Verse 11. As with a sword in my bones, my enemies reproach me while they say daily unto me, where is thy God? Why, here we go again, why art thou cast down? I wonder how many times he said it if he wrote it in one psalm. I wonder how many times he said it. And why art thou disquieted within me? Didn't he already say that? Hope thou in God. I think this is an exact replica of what we just read earlier. He wrote the whole verse. So he's trying to get something across. But notice he's being straight. He's looking at in the eye, the pain in the eye. He's calling it is what it is, but he's got God heavily involved. And so let's go to 2 Samuel 12, 15 through 23. Okay, he was being judged, got a judgment of mercy under the law. You have to remember he's under a different covenant here. All right? Murder, adultery, should have been stoned twice. But that was not the verdict. All right? And the Lord struck the child with Uriah's wife, bare unto David, and it was very sick. Okay, so the Lord struck the child under the law. He was going to get punished. This is a newborn babe. This is not your covenant. We went over this, right? I did point out, if you're going to commit a sin and God's going to take the umbrella of protection off you so the devil can stick it to you, what's the difference from that, what we just read in the old covenant? There's no difference. So Jesus died on the cross for that? There's a difference in their covenant, and it's not this. But that's not the subject here. David therefore besought God for the child. Even though the judgment was made, he knew God. He knew his relationship, and he went for it anyways. And he banked on it. He banked on the love of God, and he said, even though this is what the prophet said, even though I'm going to lose this child for murdering a man, I'm still gonna get that child from God. God's gonna change it. I'm gonna change his mind. Right? He fasted, went in, lay all night upon the earth, and the elders of his house arose, went to him to raise him up from the earth, but he would not, neither did he eat bread with them. Came to pass on the seventh day, the child died. The servants of David feared to tell him the child was dead, for they said, behold, while the child was yet alive, we spake unto him, and he would not hearken unto our voice. How will he then vex himself if we tell him that the child is dead? Next verse. But when David saw that his servants whispered, perceived that the child was dead, David said unto his servants, is the child dead? They said, he is dead. David arose from the earth, washed, anointed himself, changed his apparel, came into the house of the Lord, worshiped. Then he came to his own house, and when he had required, they set bread before him, and he did eat. Then said to his servants unto him, so look what the first thing he did was after that tragedy. He went to church. He went to church and worshiped. All right? And notice that's what he said in that psalm. Why art thou cast down on my soul? Oh, I'm going to worship God. He said it 3 different times in Psalm 42. Thou did fast and weep for the child while it was alive, but when the child is dead, now you're eating. He said, while the child was yet alive, I fasted and wept, for I said, who can tell whether God will be gracious to me that the child may live? But now he is dead. Wherefore should I fast? Can I bring him back again? I shall go to him, but he shall not return unto me. I want to point out a difference. David did not have a relationship with this child. Did he? He was a newborn. Right? So the mother, it would be different. She carried the child for 9 months, correct? So there's a bond there. I'm just being straight. There wasn't a bunch of memories with this child, okay? He didn't have 25 years with this child, right? Raise this child, go through a bunch of hard things with this child, right? And hey, more power to you. If after 7 or 8 days you can go, okay, I'm good. More power to you. That's good. If you can do that, good for you, okay? But there's a woman that's been here, I think 4 times now. She's a scientist, deep into the Word of Faith, does Word of Faith churches all the time. Her name is Carolyn Leaf. You guys have heard her. Who else heard Carolyn Leaf? Can I read something that she wrote about grief to you here real quick? It's really, really interesting. And so go off with the distance glasses and on with the readers. She says, grief is a part of life. We deal with it, ? We cope. Grief leaves an empty hole is literally true when you look at what happens inside the brain. When that person is alive, you have developed a relationship with that person. Each time you speak to that person, you share a meal. You ride in the car, the day-to-day living, big and small, happy and sad. Memories that you've built together are inside your brain. Your connection with that person is inside your brain. They are real things you have built inside your brain. They are 10% physical, 90% non-physical, according to research in quantum physics. 90% of human psyche and the world that we live in is non-physical. The 90% non-physical nature is always, it has an eternal nature. It's present, past, and future all mixed together. This helps explain the intense emotion and energy we feel pouring through us. It can be a daily basis and can be very overwhelming. Every time you think about the one you've lost, you are with your mind activating a real physical structure. Literal branches made of protein inside your brain that contain information plus emotion. Something really does happen. She calls it a physical structure. When you think, you feel. As you think about someone who has died, it's natural to feel emotions. You must think about that person, okay? It was there, and now it's not there. The remembering is like calling to that person, calling to the satisfaction of physical contact with that person that you cannot satisfy. There's a part of you that's not satisfied. Over time, the raw pain does get better. You may be in grief at the moment and be thinking that the pain will never go away. It's normal to feel like that initially. As you pass through the stages of grief, the rawness of pain will become manageable. You can learn how to make that process more feasible for yourself or more manageable by how you manage your mind. One of the most important things is the acknowledgement of the grief and the pain. The acknowledgement that you're missing that person. You don't need to try to put on a brave face. Crying the tears is actual healing. Talk about how you feel, but you determine the time when you are ready to talk. You need to feel. You can't heal what you don't feel. Talk when you're ready to talk. Do not suppress it. Try to find people and times when you can express it. Why is grief harder at holidays and birthdays and special occasions? Those are times that are high points in our lives when we had the highest emotional times. They have a higher emotional load attached to them. Visualize a tree. This is what she was talking about, a structure in your brain. Visualize a tree in your brain that is beautiful, big, and green. bushy and filled with beautiful memories. The tree represents the memory of life with your loved one. Imagine the raindrops on that tree. Those raindrops are emotions that are attached to that tree. As you think about that person, all this comes up in your conscious mind. It moves from your non-conscious to your conscious, and you get a burst of all this energy and the emotions attached to this. That memory might be surrounded by or attached to a toxic tree because that person is no longer there physically. This memory has been affected. That's why it's important to balance the toxicity of the pain with the happiness of the previous memories. She's giving instruction here how to do this. Try to focus on acknowledging. You need to acknowledge. Somehow, as you acknowledge the pain, try to look at the healthy thoughts and the good memories. Focus on the good times you had to help you turn that very painful thought of the loss into something that's more manageable. This is a daily process. This is not something that's done in 2 weeks. It isn't going to happen quickly. It will take you 21 to 63 days, maybe longer, to get it under control. It's a word of faith scientist here. Knowing that almost makes it easier. Knowing that each day you're going to be doing something structurally in your brain, it's going to take time. That helps a little bit. You'll get to the point where you'll feel like you're going to die each time you think of your loved one. It's not easy. It's difficult. We're a spirit, soul, and body. We're 3 parts. When someone dies, their physical body is now gone. Your physical body is calling out to their physical. It's not satisfied. You've got a disruption in the spirit, soul, and body nature of who you are. There's a disruption in the physical and non-physical world. It's a fact. It's traumatic and terrible, and we need to acknowledge it. We need to learn how to deal with it. Don't pretend it's not there. Don't suppress it. If you suppress the pain, you'll cause damage to your body. The suppression of the pain causes more damage than the acknowledgement of it. With the acknowledgement, we just have to be sure we don't get stuck. If you fall into sinking sand, you can get stuck. You have to embrace the pain without getting stuck. How do you change the pain? You need to focus on the good times with that person. As you focus on something good, as you think about a happy memory, you almost have to force yourself to write it down. Discipline your mind to do this. As you're doing this, you change the biochemistry of your brain. As you change the biochemistry, you actually change the biochemistry of every cell in your body. So just think about happy memory makes your brain and body stronger. As you get stronger, then you can think of another happy memory and another one. So the balance is a 2-to-1 ratio. Then build it to 3-to-1. 3 good memories to 1 acknowledgement of the sadness. You might start 1-to-1, 1 sad, 1 happy, but it has to be built up over time, and it's a slow process. It's a daily process where you can learn to actually control the pain. You can learn to deal with the grief. Don't try to hide it and say that it's not there. You're still connected to that person on a non-physical level. It's very real. You can't deny it. We acknowledge, but we work toward dealing with it. If you had traditions or routines that you did with the loved one, keep them going. Talk about how you feel. Talk about how much your loved one enjoyed that. From there, maybe you can build a new tradition or routine. Add something. What would the loved one would have liked? What would he have liked or she have liked, or what would they have done? You need to have a support system around you. You can't do it alone. You get tremendous energy from other people. The love that we get from each other will give us the strength to face what we're going through. Let people help you. Find someone you can call in the middle of the night if you need to. Someone who will just sit with you, take you to a movie, just be there, go for a walk, listen to you cry on the other end of the phone, reach out to others. Don't think that you can do this alone, that you need to do this on your own. As time goes by, your independence on others will decrease, but initially you're going to need support, and you don't need to be shy to ask about it. And so, this is a preacher that has been here, a scientist. and talking about how to deal with grief in the mind. We're about to go real deep, okay? You ever heard of the Mourner's Kaddish prayer in Judaism? Well, I'll just say this. You could talk, I think the American Indians have probably been a culture that's been through a lot of pain. I think the Africans that were ripped from their continent and made to be slaves all over the world. You can't, that's a culture that was just ripped apart. But the Jews as well are right up there with them. 6 million of them were exterminated in 6 years, okay? In the last 15 years, they've had 6,000 Qassam rockets land in their little country over there. Imagine living like that if Canada shot 6,000 Qassam rockets into Minnesota in a period over 10 years. I'm just saying. So these people, this prayer, it's called Kaddish, means sanctification. Making the Kaddish prayer a public sanctification of God's name. They're keeping God involved in the tragedy, okay? And so the record of the first Jewish mourners saying Kaddish can be found in a text based on the Talmud that describes how on Shabbat an honor was bestowed upon mourners. It's traced all the way back to this prayer was said after Jerusalem was sacked by the Romans in 70 AD. Was the first time, one of the first times this prayer was seen, okay? But it's a situation where the prayer leader approached the mourners outside the synagogue, and around the Crusader period, the mourners, it was called actually the Orphans' Kaddish, because it was recited by orphans. There were so many orphans out there at that time. According to Jewish legal text, Rabbi Isaac ben Moses of Vienna, sometime in the 13th century, by that period, it was recited as a standard. And here's this prayer. The prayer itself has no mention of death. But because it expresses an acceptance of what happened during a time when it may be difficult to accept it, it became a traditional prayer for mourners in Judaism. Likewise, because it's a public prayer of sanctification, some believe that the recitation of the prayer has the ability to increase the merit of and respect for the deceased. They're very into that, into honoring the deceased. Not just once. They continue and they continue and they continue. But here's kind of the point. After someone like that dies, listen, a sibling, in-law, child, parent, all right? The Mourner's Kaddish is recited for 11 months from the day of that individual's parents have died. It's totally acceptable for a sibling, in-law, child as well. The Mourner's is recited with a quorum of 10 people 3 times a day. Morning, afternoon, and evening. It's recited before a series of special blessings, psalms, and verses in the morning service. Traditionally, in Orthodox Judaism, only men in mourning are required to publicly it has to be recited because it is a time-bound commitment. But in most Jewish communities, regardless of affiliation, both men and women recite this prayer. The individuals reciting the prayer always stand. In some congregations, everyone stands. In others, only the mourners stand. When reciting the Mourner's Kaddish, all the mourners in attendance recite the prayer in unison. In some cases, this is 3 times a day for 11 months after the funeral. Okay, I'm just making that clear. This is a culture that knows about pain. Okay, knows about grief. A very godly culture. I'm not saying they have the answers. They're under a different covenant. Let's just acknowledge they don't have Jesus, all right? But an individual younger than 13, if has lost a parent, it says this prayer for 11 months. Because the mourners Kaddish is recited 3 times a day, many communities will rally and make sure there are 10 at each of the services so that the mourner can complete the command to recite this prayer in honor of the deceased. For many Jews, even those who never go to synagogue, these are Jews that don't even go to church, keep kosher, observe Shabbat, feel connected religiously, secular Jews, okay, take part in reciting the mourners Kaddish because it is a potent and meaningful act and an act of healing. Okay, now get this prayer, okay? It has nothing to do with the person. What they're doing is 3 times a day, they're saying, we're going to honor the deceased. We're going to look this in the eye, but we're going to bring God into it. And they do it 3 times a day for 11 months. Am I telling us that's what we have to do? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm trying to make a point on the time issue. Do you understand? No one should expect you to get over something in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It says there's a season to weep and a season to mourn. Show me a time frame. Show me a time frame in the Bible. I can't, there's not one. There is a season for it. And so here's the prayer. They say 3 times a day for 11 months. Glorified in, they stand outside the synagogue in honor of the person, all right? Believing they are bringing healing to themselves by doing this. Glorified and hallowed is God's name in the world that God created according to God's will. And may God's majesty be revealed in the days of our lifetime, in the lifetime of all the house of Israel, speedily and soon. And let us say amen. May God's great name be blessed always and forever. Blessed, praised, glorified, exalted, extolled, honored, raised up, acclaimed be the name of the Holy One. Blessed be he beyond every blessing hymn, praise, consolation that is uttered in the world. Let us say amen. May abundant peace from heaven and life be upon us and upon all Israel. Let us say amen. May God who makes peace in high places make peace upon us and upon all Israel. Let us say amen. They're not dragging the whole thing through the mud, but they are showing up in honor of that person and looking the pain in the eye and saying, come on, God, bring the peace, and you bless this nation, and you bless us, regardless of what happened. But they carry it on for 11 months, 3 times a day. They don't let it, okay, let's just put it, okay, we dealt with it. Okay, we had the funeral. Okay, everybody just move on. Let's celebrate. No, there's a time to weep, and there's a time to grieve, and as far as I know, that time is not written down anywhere in the Word. And so, with that, I'll let my wife go ahead and close it.
Yeah. If you guys can just give me just a few more minutes. I love that we are able to talk about practical things here. I mean, I feel like that's really what this family, this church is for. I mean, we're helping everybody walk through life, and I love that we're doing this. And I've caught myself a couple times, though, in the last couple of weeks, maybe doing too much of the practical. And I have found for myself, my healing, and I believe for all of us, is in the presence. It's in his presence, and I'm so thankful for the time that we had at the beginning of the service. And if you want to stick around, I'm going to ask Pastor Tim to just help us a little bit with that, but that's kind of what I want to leave us all with. That is where your healing is. Any pain, any struggle that you're going through, the healing, the breakthrough is going to come in his presence. Psalm 84. I like it in the NIV. I'm just going to read a couple of verses. Verse 4. Let's jump to 4. It says, "Blessed are those who dwell in your house. They are ever praising you. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on a pilgrimage. As they pass through the valley of Baca, they make it a place of springs. The autumn rains also cover it with pools. They go from strength to strength, till each appears before God in Zion." And what I want to bring to your attention there in verse 4, where it says, blessed are those who dwell in your house. It's just resting. Dwelling is just resting, just sitting. That word there even means just sit. But it says to ever praise him. Just praising him. There's so much power in praising him. This week we had the memorial service for Savan on Monday. And I just been like saying things, like saying, God, you are good. You are good. You are good. And I felt like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. I'm praising you, God. But it was like my heart was still just like, it was just tight. And when we got back here, there was still staff prayer with Pastor Matt going on. And I snuck into the back of the chapel. And right as I snuck in, Pastor Brandon took to the keyboard and he started playing and just praising God. And the presence of God filled that place. And I sang with Brandon. I just lifted my heart. And something broke, something happened. And so I see that there is something about praising him. And it's not just, saying the right words, just this, but getting into his presence and just lifting him up, just praising him for who he is. He's good. And like I said, I don't know the what and I don't know the why, but I know my who. And I just want to sit in his presence. I know that's where our healing comes. Yes, we have these practical things that we walk through, things we can do with our mind, and we can do all of these things. And the word says, and I feel like it's almost been abused before, where it just says, well, the joy of the Lord is your strength. And I've thought, well, then I better get joy, I better do something and joy. And it says that, in his presence, there's fullness of joy. That's your strength. Just getting into his presence. There's nothing like it. We can do all the things, but without the presence, I don't know.
There's it's not just loss of loved ones but I remember a few years ago at the men's advance, probably about 25 men answered this call where you realized, and a lot of them were old, a little bit older, where it was very clear, if you had a father that abused you, that verbally never told you he loved you, never hugged you, never only cut you down, wicked, mean, verbal stuff, and you never acknowledged that. You never acknowledged that, but it hurt you. And that's why you're angry, And the altar just flooded with these men, And what's interesting is, and many of them were just sobbing at the altar because it's something that they had never dealt with. You know what I'm saying? They pushed that pain down, right? And because it's just not the way, really, it just, a man back then was a man, I'm not coming down on it was a great generation. We probably wouldn't be free today, but my point is that there just wasn't the physical touch. There wasn't, and in other cases, these guys were ruined by their fathers that were abusive or verbally abusive. Not even physically, but verbally, you can just ruin someone, right? And these guys are dealing with this, and it hit me that, I don't think any of these guys have ever even really acknowledged this. You know what I mean? And talking to them, and I never thought about it. It was something that just you couldn't talk about, And so we're not just talking, we're talking about all kinds of pain. You can be pained with pain from causing others pain. You can have pain from causing others pain, guilt pain, from things that you did before. There's a lot of healing that can happen here, right? We're not just, and it's not a light issue. We're not just talking about the death of a loved one, We're just talking about pain, undealt with pain, pushed aside, right? Pain. So, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I didn't elaborate on it, but in that verse that I read, and it says the valley, as they pass through the valley of Baca, that Baca means weeping, they make it a place of springs. The autumn rains also cover it with pools. They go from strength to strength. So, like we said earlier, you get to choose what's going to come from this. You get to choose what's going to come from your pain. And when you go through the weeping, it says that he'll rain down on those tears. Life will come up out of those tears. Not one, it says he saves your tears. And he will pour life onto that. But it's in his presence. And the chapter goes on and it ends with the Lord Almighty. Blessed is the one who trusts in you. And I cannot get enough of the trust. The things that don't make sense, the things that you don't have the answers for, can you just trust him? Just get in his presence and just say, I trust you for who you are. And that trust, that positions you for the breakthrough. It's not anything else that you need to be doing, just that you trust him, that he's good, that he's good.
And just to reiterate, blessed are those whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on a pilgrimage. As they pass through the valley of tears, they make it a place of springs. The autumn rains also cover it with pools. So, this is scripture here. There will be tears, okay? A valley of tears, a season of tears. And so I feel as if, and I'm not just trying to, this is not me. I'm not a big emotion generator. I'm not the type to try to get everybody crying, But I just, you have to look this stuff in the eye. Don't just sweep it over. Funeral over, okay. We'll see you up there, buddy. No, deal with if you got to deal with it, deal with it. And don't feel bad about it. Don't be condemned about it. We just read you're going to pass through a valley of tears. Okay?